The wedding night should have been ordinary, cold, perfunctory, a business transaction sealed with vows neither of them believed in. But when Rowan Hale watched his new wife turn away from him, shoulders rigid with something beyond modesty, he didn't expect what came next. The dress slipped, moonlight cut across her bare back, and there it was, a wilderness of scars, thick and deliberate, telling a story she'd never spoken aloud. In that instant, the contract between them shattered. This wasn't a marriage, it was a reckoning. If you want to see how far this story of survival and transformation goes, stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this journey reaches. The chapel had been beautiful in a sterile kind of way. White roses, silk ribbons, the low murmur of two families who didn't know each other pretending this meant something. Lena Hale now, had stood at the altar in a dress that cost more than most people earned in a year and felt nothing, not joy, not hope, not even dread. Just nothing. Rowan Hale had looked at her exactly twice during the ceremony. Once, when she walked down the aisle, his expression flat as glass. Once when the officiant told him he could kiss his bride, and he'd leaned in with all the warmth of someone signing a contract. His lips had barely grazed hers. She'd tasted expensive whiskey and indifference. Now, hours later, she stood in the bedroom of his estate, their estate, she supposed, staring at herself in the mirror. The dress was still on. She hadn't been able to reach the buttons herself, and there was no one to help. No bridesmaids, no mother fussing over her, just silence and the ticking of a clock somewhere down the hall. The door opened behind her. She didn't turn, didn't flinch. She'd learned a long time ago that sudden movements only made things worse. "You're still dressed." Rowan's voice was low, flat. Not unkind, but not kind either. Just factual. "I can't reach the buttons." A pause. Then footsteps, slow and measured. She watched him approach in the mirror, tall, dark-haired, shoulders like he carried the weight of something he'd never talk about. His tie was gone, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He looked tired. He stopped behind her, close but not touching. "Turn around." She did. Slowly. Her hands were shaking and she hated it, hated that her body betrayed her like this, hated that after everything she still couldn't control the fear that lived in her bones. His eyes flicked to her hands, then back to her face. "I'm not going to hurt you." She didn't respond. What was there to say? Every man who'd ever hurt her had said some version of that line first. Rowan's jaw tightened. He gestured toward the bed. "Sit. I'll undo the buttons. Then you can change and we'll sleep. That's it." Lena sat, stiff as a board, hands folded in her lap. She felt him move behind her again, felt the slight tug as he began working the first button free. His fingers were careful, methodical. He wasn't rushing. "This dress is ridiculous," he muttered after the fifth button. "Who the hell designed something with 30 buttons?" "Someone who assumes the bride has help." It was the first real thing she'd said to him all day. He paused, just for a second, then kept going. "You don't have sisters?" "No." "Mother?" "Dead. When I was 12. Another pause. Longer this time. "I'm sorry." She didn't know what to do with that. Sorry didn't change anything. Sorry didn't undo the last 8 years. She stayed quiet. The buttons continued, one by one, slow and steady. She kept her eyes on the far wall, on the painting of some countryside she'd never seen, and tried to count her breaths. 4 in, 4 out, 4 in, 4 out. Then his hand stopped. She felt it. The exact moment everything changed. The air in the room shifted. His breathing hitched, just barely, and his fingers went still against her spine. He'd reached the part where the fabric pulled away from her skin. Lena, her name. Not cold anymore, something else. Something she couldn't identify. "Don't." "What happened to you?" "It doesn't matter." "Like hell it doesn't." She stood abruptly, pulling away from him, holding the dress against her chest. "I said don't," but it was too late. She could see it in his eyes. He'd seen enough. More than enough. The dress gaped open in the back and there was no hiding it now. No pretending. No carefully angled clothing or darkened rooms. The scars were there. Thick, raised lines that crisscrossed her back like railroad tracks. Some old and faded, some newer. All of them deliberate. Rowan didn't move. didn't look away. Who did that to you? I need to change, her voice cracked. She hated that too. Lena, please. Something in that word must have reached him because he stepped back, held up his hands. Okay, I'll be in the study. Take your time. He left, pulled the door shut behind him with a soft click that somehow felt louder than a slam. Lena stood there, clutching the dress, shaking so hard she thought her legs might give out. She'd been so careful, so careful, for years, and it had taken one night, one moment for everything to unravel. She let the dress fall, stepped out of it, found the nightgown someone had laid out on the bed, white, lace, something meant for a wedding night that would never happen. She pulled it on and climbed under the covers, fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling. Rowan didn't come back to the bedroom that night. The next morning, Lena woke to an empty house. Not empty, there were staff, she could hear them moving downstairs, but empty of him. A note on the nightstand, written in sharp, angular handwriting. Had to go to the office. Mrs. Chen will show you around. Make yourself at home. Make yourself at home. She almost laughed. Mrs. Chen turned out to be a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She showed Lena the kitchen, the library, the gardens, all the places she was allowed to exist in this house that wasn't hers. Lena nodded and smiled and said thank you, and the whole time she felt like she was playing a role in someone else's life. Mr. Hale is often at the office, Mrs. Chen said, as they stood in the sunroom, looking out at manicured lawns that stretched toward a line of trees. But he'll be home for dinner. He's particular about that. Dinner? 6 o'clock, every night. Lena filed that away. Structure, rules. She could work with that. Rules made sense. It was the absence of them that scared her. The day crawled by. She unpacked the few belongings she'd brought, mostly clothes, a handful of books. Nothing personal, because there was nothing personal to bring. She tried to read but couldn't focus. Tried to sit in the garden but felt too exposed. Eventually, she ended up back in the bedroom, sitting on the floor with her back against the bed, knees pulled to her chest. This was her life now. This house. This man. This strange, hollow arrangement. At 6 o'clock, she went downstairs. Rowan was already there, sitting at the head of a dining table that could seat 12 but was set for 2. He stood when she entered, pulled out her chair, waited until she sat before sitting himself. "Did you sleep okay?" he asked. "Fine." "Mrs. Chen give you the tour?" "Yes." He nodded, cut into his chicken, chewed, swallowed. The silence stretched. Lena picked at her food. She wasn't hungry. Hadn't been hungry in weeks, if she was honest. The wedding had been planned for 6 months, and every day leading up to it had felt like walking toward an execution. "I need to apologize," Rowan said suddenly. She looked up. "Last night, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." "You didn't." His eyes met hers. "Don't lie." She set down her fork. "What do you want me to say?" "The truth would be a start. The truth is complicated. I've got time." Lena's chest tightened. She could feel it starting, that familiar pressure, the walls closing in, the air getting thin. She forced herself to breathe, 4 in, 4 out. "My father," she said quietly, he has strong opinions about discipline." "Discipline." Rowan's voice went flat again. "You call that discipline?" "He calls it that." "What do you call it?" She didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the words were there, locked somewhere behind her teeth, but saying them out loud would make them real in a way they'd never been before. Rowan pushed his plate away, leaned back in his chair. "Your father isn't welcome here." "Excuse me?" "I don't care what the arrangement was. Whatever contract our family signed, whatever agreement brought us here, he doesn't set foot in this house." Lena stared at him. "You can't do that." "I just did." "He's my father." "He's a goddamn—" Rowan stopped, took a breath. "He's not coming here. If you want to see him, that's your choice. But not here. Not in my home." "My home. Not our home." She noticed that. "He'll be angry," she said softly. "Let him be angry." "You don't understand. When he's angry, he can be angry from a distance." Rowan stood. I'm not negotiating this, Lena. It's done. He left the dining room. She heard his footsteps recede down the hall, heard a door close somewhere in the house, and she sat there, alone at a table set for two, trying to figure out if she'd just been protected or trapped. 3 days passed. Rowan went to the office, came home at 6. They ate dinner in near silence. He didn't ask questions, didn't push, didn't try to touch her. At night, he slept in the study. She slept in the bedroom. The house existed in a state of careful, practiced avoidance. On the 4th day, her father came anyway. Lena was in the library when she heard the commotion. Raised voices. Mrs. Chen saying something sharp, then a voice she knew better than her own. Cold, precise, cutting through the air like a blade. Where is my daughter? She felt her body respond before her mind caught up. Heart racing, hands shaking, that old familiar terror rising up from somewhere deep and primal. The library door opened. Richard Ashford stood there, impeccably dressed as always, silver hair perfectly combed, eyes like ice. He looked at her the way he always did, assessing, cataloging, finding her lacking. Lena. Father, her voice came out barely above a whisper. I've been trying to reach you. I've been adjusting. He stepped into the room, closed the door behind him. You didn't return my calls. I'm sorry, don't apologize. It's weak. He moved closer. She fought every instinct to step back. I came to see how you're settling in, make sure you're upholding your responsibilities. You look thin. Are you eating? Yes. You're slouching. She straightened immediately. Hated herself for it. Hated that after all this time, after everything, his voice still had that power over her. Has he touched you? The question came out clinical, detached, like he was asking about the weather. No. Richard's eyes narrowed. No? The marriage is... We're still adjusting. Adjusting, he repeated. This isn't a friendship, Lena. You have duties, expectations. I know. Do you? He was close now, too close. She could smell his cologne, that expensive scent that used to mean safety when she was little and now meant something else entirely. Because from where I stand, it looks like you're failing. Again. I'm not... The door opened. Rowan stood in the doorway, still in his suit, tie loosened. His eyes went from Lena to Richard and back again. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. Mr. Ashford, he said evenly, I don't remember inviting you. Richard turned, smiled that politician smile he was so good at. Rowan, I was just checking on my daughter, making sure she's adjusting to married life. She's adjusting fine. I'd prefer to hear that from her. I'd prefer you leave. The smile didn't falter. I'm sorry? You heard me. Rowan stepped into the room, moved to stand beside Lena. Not in front of her. Beside. This is my home. You weren't invited. Now you're leaving. Richard's jaw tightened. I have every right to see my daughter. You have the right I give you, and right now, that's 0. Rowan? Lena started, but Rowan held up a hand. If Lena wants to see you, she can call. She can meet you somewhere. But you don't come here unannounced. You don't walk into my house like you own it. Are we clear? The silence that followed was suffocating. Richard looked at Rowan like he was seeing him for the first time, really seeing him, recalculating something in his head. Then he looked at Lena. We'll speak later, he said. Not a suggestion, a command. He left. Mrs. Chen appeared in the hallway to escort him out, though from the look on her face, escort might have been a generous term. Lena couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, too hot, her chest too tight. Lena, Rowan's voice, closer now. She couldn't finish. The words stuck. Hey, look at me. She did, forced herself to. His face was different than she'd seen it before. Not cold, not indifferent, but something else. Something almost like concern. Breathe, he said. Just breathe. I'm fine. You're not, and that's okay, but you need to breathe. She tried. 4 in, 4 out. But it felt like sucking air through a straw. Her vision started to blur at the edges. Sit down. She didn't remember sitting, but suddenly she was on the floor, back against the bookshelf. Rowan crouched in front of her. Count with me, he said. 4 seconds in. Hold for 4. 4 seconds out. Hold for 4. Can you do that? She nodded, tried, failed, tried again. He counted. She followed. Slowly, slowly, the room came back into focus. The tightness in her chest eased. Her hands stopped shaking quite so badly. Better? He asked. Yes, I'm sorry, don't. I should have told him not to come. I should have… Lena, stop. He sat back on his heels. You didn't do anything wrong. He's going to be angry. Let him. You don't understand. When he's angry, She stopped. Couldn't say it, but she didn't have to. She could see it in Rowan's eyes. He understood. Maybe not the details, not the specifics, but the shape of it, the reality. He's not going to hurt you again, Rowan said quietly. You can't promise that. I just did. She laughed. It came out broken, half hysteria. You think you can stop him? You think… I think I can make his life very difficult if he tries. Rowan stood, offered her his hand. And I think you're stronger than you believe you are. She took his hand, let him pull her up. Stood there, unsteady, trying to figure out if this man in front of her, this stranger she'd married, was real or if this was just another performance. Why are you doing this? She asked. Doing what? Being, I don't know, kind, protective. You didn't sign up for this. Neither did you. Fair point. Rowan let go of her hand, stepped back. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what this is, this marriage, this arrangement. I don't know what it's supposed to be or what anyone expects, but I know what it's not. He paused. It's not going to be what you had before. Whatever your father did, whatever you had to endure, that's over. You understand? She wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly it hurt. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Do what? Be a person, someone's wife. I don't know what normal is supposed to look like. Then we'll figure it out. He moved toward the door. Dinner's in an hour. Mrs. Chen made pot roast. He left her there, standing in the library, surrounded by books about other people's lives, trying to imagine what her own might look like if she was brave enough to reach for it. That night, Rowan didn't go to the study. He came to the bedroom. Lena was already there, sitting on the edge of the bed, still dressed. She tensed when he walked in. I'm not here to… He stopped. I'm just here to sleep. In the bed. Like married people do. That's all. Okay. He moved around the room, getting ready, changing clothes, brushing teeth, all the mundane rituals of nighttime. She watched him in the mirror, this man she barely knew, and tried to reconcile the cold stranger from the wedding with the person who'd just defended her against her own father. He got into bed, stayed on his side, a full foot of space between them. You can turn off the light, he said. She did. Darkness swallowed the room. She lay down, rigid, every muscle tense. Minutes passed. She listened to him breathe, counted the seconds, waited for something to happen, for the space between them to disappear, for the inevitable. Lena, her breath hitched. Yes? I meant what I said. I'm not going to touch you, not until you want me to, and if you never want me to, that's fine too. This doesn't have to be that kind of marriage. She didn't know what to say, didn't know if she believed him. But in the darkness, with the weight of the day pressing down on her, she found herself saying, thank you. For what? For today, for standing up to him. A pause, then, that's not something you should have to thank me for. But I do. She heard him shift, rolling onto his side. She stayed on her back, staring at the ceiling. He's not going to let this go, she said quietly. I know. He'll find a way to make me pay for it. Not if I have anything to say about it. You barely know me. Why do you care? The question hung in the air. She didn't expect an answer, didn't think he had one. Then, I saw your back. Her whole body went cold. I saw what he did to you, Rowan continued, and I decided right then that he doesn't get to do it anymore. That's not complicated. That's just basic human decency. Most people don't have that. Then most people are assholes. She almost smiled, almost. Get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow's going to be easier, and the day after that. Eventually, it'll be normal. What's normal? Hell if I know, but we'll figure it out. She closed her eyes, listened to his breathing even out, and for the first time in 8 years she fell asleep in the same room as another person, without fear gnawing at her bones. It didn't last long. She woke 3 times that night, heart racing, convinced something was wrong. But each time, Rowan was still there, still on his side of the bed, still sleeping, still keeping his word. By morning, she was exhausted. But something had shifted. Maybe just a little. Maybe enough. The weeks that followed developed a rhythm. Rowan went to work. Lena explored the house, the gardens, tried to find ways to fill the hours. They ate dinner together, talked about small, safe things, the weather, books, neutral territory. At night, they shared the bed with an ocean of space between them. Her father called. She didn't answer. He called again. She let it ring. On the 4th call, she finally picked up. Lena. Hi, Dad. You've been avoiding me. I've been busy. Busy. He let the word sit there. Your husband is making things difficult. He's just protective. He's overstepping. You need to remind him of his place. His place? She almost laughed. Dad, this is his house. I'm the one who's... You're my daughter. That comes first, always. The old familiar grip of fear tightened around her chest. I know. Do you? Because from where I sit, it seems like you've forgotten who you belong to. I don't belong to anyone. Silence. Then, excuse me? She'd said it without thinking. The words just came out, sharp and clear, and now they hung there between them, impossible to take back. I mean, no, you meant what you said. His voice went ice cold. We need to have a conversation. In person. This weekend. I'll come by. No. What? Don't come by. If you want to talk, I'll meet you somewhere, but not here. Another silence. Longer this time. You're making a mistake, Lena. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. She hung up before he could respond. Sat there, phone in hand, shaking so hard she thought she might shatter. Rowan found her like that 20 minutes later, still frozen in place. What happened? He asked. I told my father no. He sat down beside her. Good. Is it? Because it doesn't feel good. It feels terrifying. That's how it's supposed to feel. The first time you stand up to someone who spent years making you afraid, it's supposed to be scary as hell. He's going to retaliate. Let him try. She looked at him, really looked at him. At the man who'd married her out of obligation but was choosing, day by day, to be something more than that. Why are you on my side? She asked. Because someone should be. It was such a simple answer, such an obvious one, but no one had ever said it to her before. I don't know how to do this, she said again. Do what? Trust you. Trust this. Trust that you're not going to wake up one day and decide I'm not worth the trouble. Rowan shifted, turning to face her fully. Lena, I'm not going anywhere. This is a marriage. Maybe it didn't start the way most marriages do. Maybe we don't love each other the way people in romance novels love each other, but it's real, and I don't break my commitments. Even when they're hard? Especially then. She wanted to believe him, wanted it more than anything. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll try. To trust you, to trust this. I'll try. He nodded. That's all I'm asking. And in that moment, sitting in the fading afternoon light, something cracked open in her chest. Just a little. Just enough to let a sliver of light in. Not hope. Not yet. But something close to it. Something that felt almost like possibility. The decision to meet her father came 3 days later, and it wasn't hers. Richard Ashford showed up at Rowan's office downtown. Walked past the receptionist, past security, straight into the conference room where Rowan was in the middle of a board meeting. Lena only found out about it when Rowan came home 2 hours early, his jaw tight and his knuckles bruised. What happened? She asked, meeting him in the foyer. Mrs. Chen hovered nearby, concern written across her face. Your father happened. Rowan shrugged off his jacket, wincing slightly. He made some threats. I made some promises. Then he made the mistake of putting his hands on me. Lena's stomach dropped. You hit him? He hit first. I finished it. Rowan looked at her and there was something dark in his eyes, something she hadn't seen before. He's demanding you come home. Says this marriage is a mistake, that he made an error in judgment giving you to someone who doesn't know how to control his wife. Control? His words, not mine. Rowan moved past her toward the living room, poured himself a drink. He gave me an ultimatum. Either you come to his house this Sunday for dinner, or he'll make things very difficult for both of us. Legally, financially, socially. Lena felt the walls closing in. He can't do that. He's your father. He has lawyers. And apparently, buried in the marriage contract, there's some clause about family mediation if disputes arise within the first year. Rowan drank, grimaced. I should have read the damn thing more carefully. What does that mean? It means if we refuse, he can petition to have the marriage annulled on grounds of coercion or incompatibility. He's claiming you were forced into this, that you're being held against your will. The irony wasn't lost on her. That's insane. That's your father. Rowan set down the glass. So we have a choice. We go to dinner, we play nice, we show him you're fine and this marriage is working, or we fight him in court, which could take months and cost more than either of us wants to spend. There's a third option. He looked at her. Which is, I go alone. Absolutely not. Rowan, no. I'm not sending you into that house by yourself. Not after what I saw on your back. Not after... He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. No. He won't hurt me if I go willingly. You don't know that. Yes, I do. She moved closer, forced herself to hold his gaze. I know exactly how he operates. If I show up alone, if I let him feel like he's won, he'll be satisfied. He'll back off. But if you come with me, if he sees you as a threat, I don't care if he sees me as a threat. I do. Her voice cracked. Because when he feels threatened, he doesn't stop. He escalates, and I've spent my whole life watching him destroy people who got in his way. Rowan stared at her for a long moment. What did he do to you? What? The scars, the fear, the way you flinch when someone moves too fast. What exactly did he do? She couldn't answer. The memories were there, sharp, vivid, waiting, but putting them into words felt impossible. Lena, he broke 3 of my ribs when I was 15, she said quietly. I told a teacher at school that I didn't want to go home, that I was scared. She called child services. They came to the house, asked questions, and my father was very polite, very charming. He showed them my room, my things, explained that I was dramatic, that I had issues with authority. They left. That night, he broke my ribs and told me if I ever humiliated him like that again, it would be worse. The silence that followed was suffocating. I'm going with you, Rowan said finally. That's not... I'm going with you, and we're going to sit through dinner, and we're going to smile and nod and play whatever game he wants us to play. And then we're leaving. Together. He moved closer, and for the first time since the wedding, he touched her, just his hand on her shoulder, gentle and steady. You don't have to face him alone anymore. That's what this marriage means. Whatever else it is or isn't, it means you're not alone. She wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him he didn't understand, that his presence would only make things worse. But the truth was, she was tired. So tired of being afraid. So tired of fighting battles by herself. Okay, she whispered. Okay? We'll go together. Sunday came too fast. Lena spent the morning getting ready with the kind of precision that came from years of practice. Hair perfect, makeup flawless, dress conservative but expensive. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw a stranger. A doll. Someone's daughter performing the role of someone's wife. Rowan knocked on the bedroom door. Ready? No. He came in anyway. He was wearing a suit, dark gray, tie perfectly knotted. He looked every inch the successful businessman, the kind of man her father would respect, or at least pretend to. You look terrified, he said. I am terrified. We can still cancel. No, we can't. He held out his hand. Then let's get this over with. The drive to her father's estate took 40 minutes. 40 minutes of silence broken only by the sound of tires on asphalt and Lena's increasingly rapid breathing. Rowan didn't try to fill the quiet with reassurances or empty words. He just drove, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the center console where she could reach it if she wanted to. She didn't reach for it, couldn't. Every time she got close, her hand froze. The estate appeared like something out of a Gothic novel, all stone and iron gates and perfectly manicured hedges. Rowan pulled up to the front entrance. A valet appeared. Rowan ignored him, came around to Lena's side, opened her door. "Breathe," he murmured. She tried. The front door opened before they reached it. Her father stood there, impeccably dressed as always, smile fixed in place. "Lena, Rowan, right on time." "Mr. Ashford," Rowan's voice was neutral, professional. "Please, call me Richard. We're family now." He stepped aside, gestured them in. "Dinner's almost ready. Why don't you both come into the sitting room?" The house smelled the same, old money and fresh flowers and something underneath, something cold. Lena felt herself shrinking with every step, shoulders curling in, voice getting smaller. "Stand up straight," her father said without looking at her. She straightened, hated herself for it. The sitting room was exactly as she remembered. Leather furniture, dark wood, paintings of ancestors who'd probably been just as cruel as their descendant. Her father poured drinks, handed one to Rowan, ignored Lena entirely. "So," Richard said, settling into his chair, "how's married life treating you both?" "Fine," Rowan said. "Just fine?" Richard smiled. "Lena, dear, surely you have more to say than that." She felt Rowan tense beside her, felt her father's eyes on her, assessing, waiting. "It's been an adjustment," she managed. "I'm sure it has. Marriage is always difficult in the beginning, especially when two people barely know each other." He took a sip of his drink. "Tell me, Rowan, how are you finding my daughter? Is she living up to expectations?" "She's not a product on a shelf." Richard's smile didn't falter. "Of course not. But you must have had certain hopes when you agreed to this arrangement." "My hopes are none of your business. Everything about my daughter is my business. She's my wife now. That makes her my business." The temperature in the room dropped. Lena could feel it, the shift, the pivot, the moment when her father decided to stop pretending. "Your wife," Richard repeated. "Yes, about that." He set down his glass, leaned forward. "I've been hearing some troubling things. From friends, colleagues. They say you've been keeping Lena isolated, that she's not attending social functions, not making the rounds, not fulfilling her duties as your wife." "What duties would those be?" "The usual. Charity events, dinner parties, making connections, building your reputation." Richard's gaze flicked to Lena. "Isn't that right, dear? Haven't I always taught you that a wife's job is to support her husband's career?" "Yes," Lena whispered. "Speak up." "Yes, sir." Rowan stood abruptly. "We're done here." "Sit down." Richard didn't raise his voice, didn't move, but the command was absolute. "We're not finished." "Yes, we are. Thank you for the invitation, but my wife and I are leaving." "Your wife isn't going anywhere until I say so." "Actually, she is." Rowan held out his hand to Lena. "Come on." She couldn't move. Her body had locked up, every muscle frozen, every instinct screaming at her to stay in her chair, to not make this worse, to not defy him. "Lena," Rowan's voice was softer now. "We're leaving." "She's not going anywhere," Richard said again. He stood, and suddenly the room felt smaller, darker. "I think it's time we had a real conversation, just the three of us, about what's expected, what's acceptable, and what the consequences are when my daughter forgets her place. Her place is with me. Her place is where I say it is." Richard moved closer to Lena. She felt herself start to shake. "Stand up." She stood. Couldn't help it. The command was automatic, bred into her bones. "Good girl. Now apologize." "For what?" The words came out before she could stop them. Her father's expression went cold. "For embarrassing me. For disrespecting me. For making me come to your husband's office like some common supplicant." He paused. "For being ungrateful after everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done?" She choked on the words. "You broke my ribs, you—" The slap came fast. 1 second she was standing, the next her head snapped to the side, pain exploding across her cheek. She stumbled, caught herself on the arm of the chair. Rowan moved. She didn't see what happened next, not clearly, just a blur of motion, the sound of something breaking, her father's voice raised in anger and then cutting off abruptly. When her vision cleared, Rowan had Richard pinned against the wall, forearm across his throat, expression absolutely lethal. "Touch her again," Rowan said quietly. And I will end you. Do you understand? Richard's face was turning red. You can't. I can. And I will. Rowan pressed harder. The only reason you're still breathing is because she's watching. But if you ever come near her again, if you call, if you show up, if you so much as think about her, I will make your life a living nightmare. I have money. I have lawyers. I have friends in places you don't want me to have friends. And I will use every single resource at my disposal to bury you. He let go. Richard collapsed, gasping, hand at his throat. Rowan turned to Lena. We're leaving. Now. This time she moved. Let him take her hand, let him guide her out of the sitting room, down the hall, through the front door. The valet tried to approach, saw Rowan's face, and backed away. They got in the car. Rowan drove. Lena sat in the passenger seat, hand pressed to her burning cheek, and tried to process what had just happened. Her father had hit her. Rowan had defended her. They'd left. They'd actually left. Are you okay? Rowan asked after several minutes of silence. I don't know. Does your face hurt? Yes. We'll put ice on it when we get home. Home. The word felt strange, foreign. He's going to retaliate, she said. Let him try. Rowan, you don't understand. He's not going to just let this go. He's going to come after you, after your business, after... I don't care. You should care. You should care a lot. Because when he decides to destroy someone, he doesn't stop until... Lena. Rowan's voice cut through her spiral. Stop. Just stop. She fell silent. I knew what I was signing up for, he continued. Maybe not all of it, maybe not the details, but I knew your father was dangerous. I knew getting involved with your family came with risks, and I made a choice. I chose you. I chose this. And I'm not backing down now because he's threatening me. Why? Her voice broke. Why would you choose this? Choose me? I'm broken. You're not broken. He glanced at her, then back at the road. You're hurt. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that the damage her father had done wasn't permanent, that she could be something other than afraid. But the voice in her head, the one that sounded like Richard, kept telling her she was fooling herself. They drove the rest of the way in silence. When they pulled up to the house, Rowan came around to her side again, opened the door, offered his hand. She took it this time. Let him help her out. Let him lead her inside. Mrs. Chen took one look at Lena's face and disappeared, returning moments later with an ice pack and a cup of tea. Sit, she ordered, pointing to the couch. Lena sat. Mrs. Chen pressed the ice pack gently against her cheek, clucking disapprovingly. Men who hit women should be shot. Mrs. Chen, Rowan started. I mean it, shot, or worse. She adjusted the ice pack. You did the right thing, getting her out of there. It won't be enough, Lena said quietly. Maybe not, but it's a start. Mrs. Chen patted her shoulder. I'll make soup. You need to eat something. She left. Rowan sat down beside Lena, careful to leave space between them. I'm sorry, Lena said. For what? For dragging you into this. For making you deal with my father. For... Stop apologizing. You didn't drag me anywhere. I walked into this with my eyes open. But you didn't know. I knew enough. He leaned back, rubbed his face. And even if I didn't, it wouldn't change anything. You're my wife. That means something to me. Even though we barely know each other, we're learning. She held the ice pack against her face, felt the cold seep into her skin, numbing the pain. What happens now? Now we wait. Your father will make his move, whatever it is, and we'll deal with it. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's survivable. The word hung between them. Survivable. Not easy. Not painless, but survivable. Lena thought about that. About the difference between surviving and living. About whether she'd ever done anything more than survive. I want to fight him, she said suddenly. Rowan looked at her. What? My father. I want to fight him. I'm tired of being afraid, tired of letting him control my life, tired of... She stopped, the words catching in her throat. I want to fight back. Okay. Okay? That's it? No lecture about being careful, no warnings about how dangerous he is? I know how dangerous he is. I saw it today. Rowan shifted, turning to face her fully. But if you want to fight, then we fight. Together.
I don't know how. Then we'll figure it out. There it was again, that word. We. Not you alone. Not me fixing your problems. We. He's going to come after everything you've built, Lena warned. Your business, your reputation, your... I know. And you're still willing to do this? Yes. Why?
He was quiet for a moment, considering, then, because someone needs to stand up to him. Because you deserve better. And because... He paused. Because I'm starting to realize that this marriage might be the best decision I've ever made, contract or not. Lena stared at him. You're serious? Completely. You're insane. Probably. He almost smiled. But I'm your kind of insane, so we're stuck with each other. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Settled for neither, just sat there with the ice pack pressed to her face, trying to absorb the reality of what was happening. For the first time in her life, someone was choosing to stand beside her instead of using her or controlling her or breaking her down. It was terrifying. It was also the closest thing to hope she'd felt in years. Mrs. Chen returned with soup. They ate in the living room, quiet and exhausted. Later, when Lena went upstairs to change, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. The mark on her face was already turning purple. Evidence. Proof. She touched it gently, wincing at the pain. Her father's final mark, or maybe, hopefully, his last. Rowan appeared in the doorway. You should take something for the pain. It's fine. It's not fine. Nothing about today was fine. He came into the room, rifled through the medicine cabinet, found ibuprofen. Take these. She did, swallowed them with water from the bathroom tap. Are you going to be okay? He asked. Eventually. That's honest. You wanted honesty. I did. He leaned against the doorframe, looking more tired than she'd ever seen him. For what it's worth, I think you're brave. Brave? She laughed bitterly. I froze. I couldn't move. I let him hit me. You survived. That's brave. That's not the same thing. It is when you've been through what you've been through. She didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to accept kindness when she'd spent so long believing she didn't deserve it. Get some sleep, Rowan said. Tomorrow, we'll start figuring out our next move. He turned to leave. Rowan? He stopped, looked back. Thank you for today. For all of it. You don't have to thank me. I know, but I want to. He nodded, left. She heard his footsteps recede down the hall, heard a door close, and she stood there in the bathroom, looking at her reflection, and wondered if maybe, just maybe, she could become someone other than the girl her father had created. That night, she lay awake for hours, replaying the day, the slap, Rowan's fury, the way they'd left together, the promise he'd made to stand beside her. At some point, she heard his door open, heard footsteps in the hall. Then her door opened, just a crack. Lena? I'm awake. Can't sleep? No. A pause. Do you want company? Just to... I don't know. Not be alone. She thought about it. About the risk of letting him in, of getting used to having someone there. About what it might mean. Okay. He came in, sat on the other side of the bed. On top of the covers, fully clothed, keeping distance. But there. Present. You don't have to stay, she said. I know. But you're staying anyway. Yeah. They lay there in the dark, two people who'd started as strangers and were becoming something else, something neither of them had names for yet. My father's not going to stop, Lena said quietly. I know. He's going to make our lives hell. Probably. Are you scared? Rowan was quiet for a long time, then terrified, but not of him. Then what? Of failing you, of not being enough, of... He stopped. Of caring too much about someone I barely know. Her breath caught. Rowan, don't. Just let me say this. He shifted, and even though she couldn't see his face in the dark, she could hear the weight in his voice. I didn't expect this. Any of it. I thought this would be a business arrangement, nothing more. But then I saw your scars and I saw your fear, And I saw the way you've been surviving instead of living, and something in me just broke, or maybe fixed itself. I don't know. But I know that I care what happens to you. I care if you're okay. And that scares the hell out of me because caring means I can lose something, and I don't handle loss well. She didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to respond to that kind of honesty. I care too, she whispered finally. I don't want to. It would be easier not to. But I do. Then we're both screwed. Completely. And despite everything, despite the pain in her face, despite the fear in her chest, despite the certainty that her father would retaliate, she found herself smiling in the dark. They fell asleep like that, side by side, not touching, but together. When Lena woke in the morning, Rowan was gone. But there was a note on the pillow beside her. Had to go to the office early. Call if you need anything. We're in this together. She folded the note carefully, put it in the drawer of her nightstand, and for the first time since the wedding, she got out of bed without the crushing weight of dread pressing down on her chest. The call came 3 days later. Rowan's lawyer. Their marriage was being challenged. Richard had filed a petition claiming coercion, incompatibility, and mental instability on Lena's part. There would be hearings, evaluations, testimonies, the whole ugly process laid bare for anyone to see. Rowan listened to the lawyer's explanation, his face carved from stone. When he hung up, he looked at Lena. He's playing for keeps. I told you he would. What do you want to do? She thought about it. About running, about hiding, about all the ways she'd learned to make herself small. Then she thought about Rowan standing up to her father, about the note on her pillow, about the choice between surviving and living. I want to fight, she said. For real this time, not just defense, offense. Meaning we tell the truth. All of it. The scars, the abuse, everything he did. We make him answer for it. Rowan's expression shifted. That's going to be brutal. You'll have to testify, submit to evaluations, let strangers see. I know. Her voice was steady. But I'm done hiding. I'm done letting him control the narrative. If he wants a war, fine. Let's give him one. Rowan stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, then that's what we do. You're sure? Are you? She took a breath, felt something settle inside her, something solid and sure. Yes, I'm sure. And as she said it, she felt the weight shift. Not gone. It would probably never be completely gone. But different, lighter. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't facing the monster alone. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old paper. Lena sat in a chair that was too big for her, hands folded in her lap, while a woman named Margaret Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen apparently, laid out what the next few months would look like. Your father is alleging that you were coerced into this marriage under duress, Margaret said, flipping through a thick folder. He's claiming you have a history of mental instability, that you've attempted self-harm, and that Mr. Hale has isolated you from your family and support systems. That's all lies, Rowan said flatly. I know, but we need to prove it. Margaret looked at Lena. Which means you'll need to undergo a psychological evaluation. Independent, court-appointed. They'll ask about your history, your childhood, your relationship with your father. Lena's stomach turned. What do I tell them? The truth. The truth will sound insane. The truth is what we need. Margaret leaned forward. Mrs. Hale, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen cases like yours before. And I can tell you right now, the only way we win is if you're willing to be completely honest about what your father did to you, including the physical abuse. The room felt too small suddenly, too hot. How honest? Lena asked. Medical records, photographs of your scars, testimony about specific incidents. Margaret's voice softened slightly. I know this is difficult, but your father is playing a very dangerous game. He's trying to paint himself as the concerned parent and you as the unstable daughter who needs protection. We need to flip that narrative. And if I can't, then he wins. The marriage gets annulled, you go back under his guardianship until you're deemed competent, and everything continues exactly as it was before. Lena felt Rowan's hand find hers under the table. She grabbed onto it like a lifeline. What do you need from me? She asked. Margaret smiled grimly. Everything. Every scar has a story. Every injury has a date. Every time he hurt you, every time he threatened you, every time he made you feel like you were worthless. I need to know about it. That's going to take a while. We have time. The hearing isn't for 6 weeks. Margaret closed the folder. In the meantime, I need you both to keep detailed records of any contact from Mr. Ashford. Calls, texts, surprise visits, anything that could be construed as harassment or intimidation. He won't contact her directly, Rowan said. He's too smart for that. Then he'll go through other channels, friends, family, business associates. Be prepared. They left the office an hour later with a stack of paperwork and a growing sense of dread. Lena sat in the passenger seat of Rowan's car, staring at her hands. You don't have to do this, Rowan said quietly. Yes, I do. We could leave. Go somewhere he can't reach us, start over. He'd find us. He always finds a way. Rowan pulled out of the parking lot, merged into traffic. Then we fight. I'm scared. Me too. She looked at him. You never seem scared. That's because I'm good at lying. He glanced at her, something vulnerable in his expression. I'm terrified, Lena. Terrified that I'm not enough, that I can't protect you, that this is all going to blow up and you'll end up worse off than before. That's not going to happen. You don't know that. Neither do you. Fair point. They drove in silence for a while. Then Lena said, I need to tell you something. Okay? The scars on my back aren't the only ones. Rowan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Where else? My ribs. My arms. There's one on my shoulder from when I was 16 and he pushed me down the stairs. She kept her voice clinical, detached. Most of them healed wrong. Some of them still hurt when it rains. Jesus Christ. I need you to know this before we go into that courtroom, before they start asking questions. Because Margaret's right. They're going to want to see everything, and I need to know you can handle it. Handle it? Look at me and not see something broken. Rowan pulled over abruptly, put the car in park. Turned to face her fully. Listen to me. You are not broken. You are not damaged goods. You are someone who survived something that should have killed you, and you're still standing. That's not weakness. That's strength. It doesn't feel like strength. It never does. Not from the inside. He reached out, hesitated, then gently touched her face where the bruise from her father's slap was finally fading. But I see it. Every day. The way you get up, the way you keep going, the way you're choosing to fight instead of run. That's strength. She felt something crack in her chest. Not breaking. Opening. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Let someone see me. Really see me. It's terrifying. Yeah, it is. He pulled his hand back. But I'm not going anywhere, so you might as well get used to it. They sat there on the side of the road, cars rushing past, and Lena felt something shift. Not fixed, not healed, but different. Like maybe the weight she'd been carrying didn't have to be carried alone anymore. The psychological evaluation happened 2 weeks later. 3 hours of questions in a sterile office with a woman who took notes and showed no emotion. They asked about her childhood, her relationship with her father, her marriage to Rowan. They asked about the scars. Can you describe how you got this one? The psychologist, Dr. Williams, pointed to a photograph of Lena's back. The scars looked worse in black and white somehow. More real. Which one? The one across your left shoulder blade. Lena stared at the photo, tried to disconnect from it to see it as just an image and not her own skin. I was 14. I forgot to set the table for dinner. My father used his belt. Just that once? No. That's just that particular scar. Dr. Williams wrote something down. How many times would you estimate your father physically disciplined you? Disciplined. The word tasted bitter. I don't know. A lot. Hundreds, maybe. And your mother? Was she present during these incidents? My mother died when I was 12. I'm sorry. What about other family members? Did anyone try to intervene? Lena laughed, a sharp, broken sound. No one intervened. No one knew. My father was very careful about that. More notes. More questions. By the time it was over, Lena felt scraped raw, like someone had taken sandpaper to her insides. Rowan was waiting in the lobby. He stood when he saw her, and she must have looked as bad as she felt because his expression went tight with concern. "How bad?" he asked. "Pretty bad." He didn't say anything else, just took her hand and led her out to the car. They drove home in silence. When they got there, Lena went straight to the bedroom and collapsed on the bed, fully clothed. She heard Rowan come in, felt the bed dip as he sat down beside her. "Talk to me," he said. "I can't." "Then just be here. Let me be here with you." She rolled over, looked at him. He looked tired, older somehow than he had a month ago. "This is destroying you too." "I'm fine." "You're lying." "Yeah, I am." He ran a hand through his hair. "But I'll survive. We both will." "You don't know that." "I have to believe it. Otherwise, what's the point?" She didn't have an answer for that. The next blow came a week later. Someone leaked the evaluation to the press. Not the details. Thank God, not the details. But enough. Enough for the headlines to scream about mental health evaluations and unstable heiresses and marriages under scrutiny. Enough for Rowan's business partners to start asking questions. "How did this happen?" Rowan demanded, pacing Margaret's office. "Those evaluations are supposed to be confidential." "Your father-in-law has connections," Margaret said grimly, "and clearly he's willing to use them." "Can we sue?" "We can try, but that's a long game. Right now we need to focus on damage control." "Damage control," Rowan laughed bitterly. "My company's stock dropped 3 points yesterday. I've had 2 board members call asking if I'm mentally fit to continue running things. How exactly do we control this? By not giving him ammunition. By staying calm, staying united, and not responding to every piece of gossip that comes our way. He's trying to ruin me." "Yes, because he knows that if he ruins you, Lena has nothing to stand on. No financial support, no stability, no reason for the court to believe this marriage is legitimate." Lena, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. "So we give them a reason to believe it." Both Margaret and Rowan turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" Margaret asked. "I mean we stop hiding. Stop acting like we have something to be ashamed of." Lena stood, moved to the center of the room. "My father's betting on us falling apart under pressure. So we do the opposite. We show up, together. We go to events, we make appearances. We act like the married couple we're supposed to be." "That's going to put you in the spotlight," Margaret warned. "Good. Let him see that I'm not afraid anymore." Rowan stared at her. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." The first event was a charity gala. Black tie, high society, all the people who love to gossip. Lena spent 2 hours getting ready, putting on armor in the form of a dress that cost more than her childhood home and makeup that hid the shadows under her eyes. Rowan knocked on the bedroom door. "Ready?" She looked at herself in the mirror one last time. "As I'll ever be." He came in, stopped when he saw her. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or appreciation. "You look terrified?" "Beautiful." She felt heat rise to her cheeks. "You're just saying that." "I'm really not." He adjusted his tie, suddenly awkward. "Come on, let's go face the vultures." The gala was exactly as awful as Lena expected. Whispers followed them everywhere. People stared, then looked away when caught. A woman Lena vaguely recognized from her father's social circle made a point of turning her back when they approached. "This was a mistake," Lena murmured. "No, it wasn't." Rowan's hand found the small of her back, steady and warm. "Hold your head up. You've got nothing to be ashamed of. Everyone's staring." "Let them stare." They made it through cocktail hour, through dinner, through the speeches. Rowan introduced her to people, stayed close, never let her face anyone alone. And slowly, very slowly, Lena felt something in her chest unclench. Then she saw him. Her father stood across the room, immaculate in his tuxedo, champagne in hand, talking to someone important, judging by the way the other man laughed at whatever Richard was saying. He hadn't seen her yet. Or maybe he had and was just waiting. "He's here," Lena whispered. Rowan followed her gaze. His expression went hard. "Ignore him." "I can't." "Yes, you can. We stay on this side of the room. But Richard was already moving toward them, cutting through the crowd with the confidence of someone who owned the space. Lena felt her body lock up, old instincts screaming at her to run, to hide, to make herself invisible.
Lena, Richard said warmly, like they were old friends. How lovely to see you, Rowan. Richard. Rowan's voice was ice. I didn't realize you'd be attending tonight. It's a charity event. We're being charitable. Richard smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Of course. How is married life treating you both? I trust you're settling in. We're fine, Lena managed. Fine, such a lukewarm word. He took a sip of champagne. I've been hearing interesting things. About evaluations, about hearings. It's all very concerning. I'm sure it is, Rowan said. As a father, I only want what's best for my daughter. I'm sure you understand. What's best for your daughter is for you to leave her alone. The temperature dropped. People nearby started to notice, to lean in slightly, sensing drama. Strong words, Richard said softly. Careful, Rowan. You're making a scene. Good. Let's make it bigger. Rowan raised his voice slightly. Everyone here should know what kind of man you really are. What you did to your own daughter, the scars you left on her. Lena grabbed his arm. Rowan, don't. No. He wants to play games. Let's play. Rowan turned to the crowd that was definitely watching now. This man spent years beating his daughter, breaking her bones, making her believe she was worthless. And now he's trying to paint himself as the victim because she finally got away from him. The room had gone completely silent. Richard's mask slipped for just a second. Rage flashed across his face before he smoothed it over. You're going to regret this. Probably. But it'll be worth it. Richard set down his glass with careful precision. We'll see how confident you are when you've lost everything. Your business, your reputation, your marriage. He looked at Lena. And you. Don't think this little display of rebellion changes anything. You're still mine. You'll always be mine. No, Lena's voice came out stronger than she expected. I'm not. Not anymore. Richard's smile was sharp as a blade. We'll see about that. He walked away. The crowd parted for him, and Lena stood there shaking while whispers exploded around them. We need to leave. Margaret appeared at their side, materializing from the crowd. Now, before this gets any worse. They left, pushed through the crowd, ignored the questions, made it to the car. Rowan drove while Lena sat in the passenger seat, trying to breathe, trying to process what had just happened. That was either very brave or very stupid, Margaret said from the back seat. Both, Rowan muttered. He's going to use this. You know that, right? He's going to claim you're unstable, that you're influencing her, that... I know. Then why did you do it? Because I'm tired of pretending, tired of letting him control the narrative, tired of watching Lena flinch every time someone mentions his name. Lena looked at him. You didn't have to defend me like that. Yes, I did. But now he's going to... I don't care what he does. I meant every word I said. Rowan's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. And if I have to say it again in court, in front of everyone, I will. Margaret sighed. Well, I guess we're going all in then. Guess so. They dropped Margaret at her office, drove home. The house was quiet, dark. Mrs. Chen had left a note saying she'd taken the evening off. They were alone. Lena went to the kitchen, poured herself water with shaking hands. Rowan followed, leaned against the counter. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For losing my temper, for making a scene, for... Don't. She set down the glass. Don't apologize for being the first person to ever stand up for me. But I made things harder for you, for us, maybe. Or maybe you made them clearer. She moved closer to him. My whole life, people have looked the other way, pretended they didn't see, and you called him out in front of everyone. Yeah, probably not my smartest move. No, but it was brave. They stood there inches apart, something electric in the air between them. Lena felt her heart racing, felt the pull of something she couldn't quite name. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing me, for believing me, for... She didn't finish. Couldn't. Because Rowan was looking at her like she was the most important thing in the world, and it was terrifying and wonderful all at once. Lena, he said softly. Yeah? Can I... He stopped, swallowed hard. Can I kiss you? Her breath caught. Every instinct screamed at her to say no, to keep the distance, to protect herself. But a smaller, quieter voice said something else. Yes, He moved slowly, gave her time to change her mind, to pull away. But she didn't. And when his lips met hers, gentle and careful, she felt something inside her crack wide open. It wasn't like the wedding kiss, cold and perfunctory. This was real, warm, tentative but genuine. He pulled back after a moment, searched her face. "Okay?" he asked. "Yeah, okay." He kissed her again, and this time she kissed back. They ended up in the bedroom, moving slowly, carefully. Rowan never pushed, never demanded, just asked, with his hands, his eyes, his voice, and waited for her answer. And Lena, for the first time in her life, said yes because she wanted to, not because she had to. Afterward, she lay in his arms, listening to his heartbeat, and tried to figure out what this meant, what they were now, what happened next. "Are you okay?" Rowan asked quietly. "I think so." "Just think?" "I don't know. This is all so—" She trailed off. "Complicated?" "Yeah." He was quiet for a moment, then, "Do you regret it?" "No. Do you?" "Not even a little bit." She felt herself smile. "Good." They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time since she could remember, Lena slept through the night without nightmares. The morning brought reality crashing back. Rowan's phone rang at 6 a.m. He answered, listened, his expression growing darker with each passing second. "When?" he asked. Then, "How bad?" Lena sat up. "What's wrong?" He hung up, looked at her with something like dread. "Your father filed an emergency petition. He's claiming I'm holding you against your will, that you're in immediate danger. There's going to be a hearing today." "Today?" 3 p.m. And he's requesting a psychiatric hold. If the judge grants it, they'll take you into custody for evaluation. The room spun. "He can't do that." "He can if the judge believes you're a danger to yourself or others." Rowan was already moving, getting dressed. "We need to call Margaret, now." The next few hours were a blur. Margaret arrived, grim-faced and loaded with files. They went over strategy, over possible questions, over what to say and what not to say. And all the while, Lena felt the old fear creeping back in, that familiar voice telling her she was powerless, that her father always won. The courthouse was cold, sterile. They sat in a small room waiting to be called, and Lena couldn't stop shaking. "Breathe," Rowan said, taking her hand. "I can't." "Yes, you can. 4 in, 4 out. Remember?" She tried. Failed. Tried again. Margaret was on her phone, typing furiously. "Okay, I've got affidavits from Mrs. Chen, from your doctor, from—" "It won't be enough," Lena interrupted. "He'll have his own people, his own experts, and the judge will believe him because he always—" "Lena," Margaret's voice cut through the spiral. "We have evidence. We have your medical records, photographs, testimony. We have the truth on our side. The truth doesn't always win." "No, but it's what we've got." They were called in. The judge, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor, looked at them over her glasses. "This is highly irregular," she said. "Emergency petitions aren't granted lightly, Mr. Ashford. You're claiming your daughter is in immediate danger?" Richard stood, every inch the concerned father. "Yes, Your Honor, I have reason to believe she's being coerced, possibly drugged. Her behavior has been erratic, and I fear for her safety." "That's a lie," Lena said, her voice coming out stronger than she felt. The judge looked at her. "Mrs. Hale, you'll have your chance to speak. Right now, I want to hear from your father." Richard presented his case, carefully, methodically, painting a picture of a daughter who'd always been fragile, who'd married too quickly, who was clearly under someone's influence. He had a psychiatrist testify, a family friend who claimed to have seen Lena looking distressed and confused at the gala. Everything calculated, everything designed to make her look unstable. Then it was their turn. Margaret called Rowan first. He testified about the scars, about finding Lena terrified on their wedding night, about Richard's threats and harassment. He was calm, factual, devastating. Then Margaret called Lena. She walked to the stand on legs that felt like water, sat down, looked at her father across the courtroom. "Mrs. Hale," Margaret said gently, "can you tell the court in your own words what your relationship with your father has been like?" Lena took a breath. "He's been hurting me since I was 12 years old."
Can you be more specific? He beat me, regularly, with his belt, his hands, whatever was close. He broke my ribs when I was 15, dislocated my shoulder when I was 16, gave me a concussion when I was 17. Her voice was shaking, but she kept going. He told me I was worthless, that I was stupid, that no one would ever want me, and I believed him, until I married Rowan.
And your marriage to Mr. Hale. Was it coerced? No. It was arranged. But Rowan has never hurt me, never threatened me, never made me feel like I was less than human. He's done the opposite. He's shown me what it's like to be treated with basic decency, and my father can't stand that. Richard's lawyer stood. Objection, speculation.
Overruled, the judge said. Continue, Mrs. Hale.
Lena looked directly at her father. You want me back under your control. You want me scared and small and obedient. But I'm not that person anymore. I'm not going to let you hurt me again.
That's enough, Richard snapped, standing. Your Honor, she's clearly been coached. Mr. Ashford, sit down. The judge's voice was steel. Mrs. Hale, do you have any evidence to support these claims? Margaret stepped forward. We have medical records documenting multiple injuries over the years. Photographs of scarring consistent with prolonged physical abuse. And we have this, taken the night after Mr. Ashford assaulted Mrs. Hale at his home 2 weeks ago. She handed over a photo. Lena's bruised face, the handprint still visible. The judge studied it for a long moment, then looked at Richard. Mr. Ashford. She's lying. She's mentally unstable. She's been making up stories for years. The evidence suggests otherwise. The judge set down the photo. I'm denying the emergency petition. Mrs. Hale is clearly capable of making her own decisions. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order. Mr. Ashford, you are to have no contact with your daughter for the next 6 months. If you violate this order, you will be held in contempt. Richard's face went purple. You can't. I just did. We're adjourned. The gavel came down. For a moment, Lena couldn't move, couldn't process what had just happened. Then Rowan was there, pulling her into his arms, and she was shaking so hard she thought she might fall apart. We won, he whispered. You did it. You won. But as they left the courtroom, as Richard's eyes followed them with pure hatred, Lena knew this wasn't over. It was just beginning. The restraining order changed everything, but not in the way Lena expected. She thought freedom would feel lighter. Instead, it felt like standing on a cliff edge, waiting for the ground to give way. Richard Ashford didn't make threats he couldn't follow through on, and a piece of paper from a judge wasn't going to stop him. It would just make him more careful. You're doing it again, Rowan said from across the kitchen table. Lena looked up from her untouched breakfast. Doing what? Waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because it will. Maybe. But until it does, you get to breathe. He pushed his coffee toward her. Drink something. You look like hell. Thanks. I'm serious. When's the last time you slept more than 4 hours? She didn't answer because she didn't remember. The nightmares had come back with a vengeance after the hearing. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her father's face in the courtroom, that expression of pure, calculated rage. Mrs. Chen bustled in with fresh toast. Eat, she commanded, setting the plate in front of Lena. Both of you, you're wasting away. I'm not hungry, Lena said. Don't care. Eat anyway. Mrs. Chen crossed her arms. You think you can fight battles on an empty stomach? You think you can stand up to that monster if you're half dead from exhaustion? Mrs. Chen, no. Listen to me. The older woman's voice softened slightly. I worked for families like yours for 30 years. I've seen what men like your father do, and I've seen what happens to the people who survive them. You want to know the difference between the ones who make it and the ones who don't? Lena looked at her. The ones who make it remember they're human. They eat. They sleep. They let people help them. The ones who don't, they burn themselves out trying to be strong enough, tough enough, good enough, and they lose. Mrs. Chen tapped the table. So eat the damn toast. Lena ate the toast. Rowan hid a smile behind his coffee cup. She's got a point. I know. So maybe we take today off. No lawyers, no strategy meetings, no thinking about your father, just existing. I don't know how to do that. Then I'll teach you. They spent the morning in the garden. Rowan had never struck Lena as the gardening type,
But apparently, he'd been working on a section near the back fence for months, vegetables mostly, and some herbs Mrs. Chen used for cooking. He handed Lena a pair of gloves and showed her how to check the tomato plants for pests. "This is weirdly therapeutic," Lena said after 20 minutes of comfortable silence.
Right? Something about putting your hands in dirt makes everything else seem smaller. I can't believe you garden. There's a lot you don't know about me yet. Like what? He pulled a weed, tossed it in the bucket. I wanted to be a chef when I was younger, before my father decided I was taking over the family business, whether I liked it or not. Really? Really. Spent a summer in culinary school before he pulled me out. Said cooking was for people who worked for a living, not people who signed checks. Lena tried to picture Rowan in a kitchen, creating something instead of managing boardrooms. Do you regret it? Sometimes. But running the company isn't terrible, and I get to cook at home when I want. He glanced at her. What about you? What did you want to be before
everything? She pulled off a dead leaf. I wanted to write stories, novels, anything. I used to fill notebooks with them. Used to? My father found them when I was 14. Said they were a waste of time, that I was delusional if I thought I had any talent. He burned them in the fireplace while I watched. Rowan went still. All of them? Every single one. That's... He stopped, jaw tight. I don't have words for how messed up that is. Yeah. They worked in silence for a while. Then Rowan said, You should start again. Start what? Writing. Get new notebooks. Fill them up. Make him wrong about you. I don't know if I remember how. So learn again. You've got time now. You've got space. You've got... He gestured around the garden. Whatever this is, freedom? Maybe. Or the beginning of it. Lena looked at the plants growing around them, at the life Rowan had been quietly cultivating while the rest of the world thought he was just another cold businessman. Maybe he was right. Maybe she could grow something too. That afternoon, Margaret called. We need to talk. They met at her office an hour later. Margaret looked tired but grimly satisfied as she spread documents across her desk. Your father's been busy, she said. He filed an appeal on the restraining order, which we expected, but he also started making moves against Rowan's company. Anonymous complaints to regulatory boards, whisper campaigns to investors, the usual corporate warfare tactics. Can he do that? Lena asked. He can try, but here's where it gets interesting. Margaret pulled out another file. One of his former business partners reached out to me, a guy named Marcus Webb. He's been watching your father operate for 20 years, and apparently the restraining order was the last straw. He wants to testify. Rowan leaned forward. Testify to what? Everything. Illegal business practices, intimidation tactics, bribery, and Margaret looked at Lena. He knows about other victims, other women your father hurt before your mother died. Employees, mostly. Young women who worked for him and then mysteriously quit without explanation. The room tilted. What? I haven't verified all of it yet, but if even half of what Webb is saying is true, your father's been operating like this for decades. You weren't the only one. You were just the one he had the most control over. Lena felt sick. How many? At least 6 that Webb knows about. Probably more. And no one said anything? They signed NDAs, took settlements. Your father's very good at making problems disappear. Margaret's expression hardened. But Webb kept records, documents, emails, copies of settlement agreements. He's been sitting on all of it for years, waiting for the right moment. Why now? Rowan asked. Because you two stood up to him publicly. Because Lena testified in court. Because for the first time, someone fought back and won. Margaret looked at Lena. You started something. Now other people are finding the courage to come forward. Lena couldn't process it. Couldn't wrap her mind around the idea that there were others, that her father's cruelty extended beyond their house, beyond her. What do we do with this? She asked quietly. We build a case, not just for the annulment hearing, that's pretty much done, but criminal charges, assault, abuse of power, maybe even witness tampering if we can prove he pressured any of these women to stay quiet. He'll fight back, Lena said. He'll destroy anyone who tries to testify. Maybe. Or maybe he'll finally realize he's outnumbered. Margaret started gathering the files. I'm meeting with Webb tomorrow. I'd like you both there. He
He wants to meet Lena specifically, says he needs to look her in the eye and apologize for not speaking up sooner. They left Margaret's office in a daze. Rowan drove while Lena stared out the window, trying to make sense of what they'd just learned. There were others, she said finally. Yeah.
All this time, I thought, her voice cracked, I thought it was just me, that I did something to make him that way. Lena, no. I know. Logically, I know. But there's this part of me that always wondered if maybe I deserved it somehow. If I was the problem. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass. Knowing there were others, it's awful. But it also means it wasn't my fault. It was never your fault. I'm starting to believe that. The meeting with Marcus Webb happened in a coffee shop downtown. He was in his 60s, gray-haired and weary-looking, with the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying secrets too long. Mrs. Hale, he said, standing when they approached. Thank you for meeting me. Mr. Webb. Lena shook his hand. His grip was firm but gentle. They sat. Webb ordered coffee he didn't drink, just held the cup like he needed something to do with his hands. I don't know where to start, he said finally. I've been rehearsing this conversation in my head for days, and now that we're here, He stopped. I'm sorry. That's where I need to start. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I'm sorry I let him hurt you. I'm sorry I prioritized my career over doing the right thing. You didn't know, Lena began. I did know, maybe not the specifics, but I knew Richard Ashford was a cruel man. I saw how his employees feared him. I watched women quit without explanation, watched him write checks to make problems go away, and I told myself it wasn't my business. Webb finally looked at her. But it was my business, and I was a coward. Margaret cleared her throat. Mr. Webb has agreed to provide testimony and documentation regarding your father's pattern of behavior, but he wanted to meet you first, to explain why he's coming forward now. I'm dying, Webb said bluntly. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, 6 months, maybe less. He smiled without humor. Funny how mortality clarifies things. I spent my whole life building a reputation, accumulating wealth, playing it safe. And for what? So I could die knowing I stood by while a monster destroyed people? Lena struggled for words. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know that what I'm doing isn't about redemption. It's too late for that. It's about making sure he can't do this to anyone else. Webb pushed a thick envelope across the table. That's copies of everything I have. Settlement agreements, internal memos, email chains. 20 years of Richard Ashford's greatest hits. Margaret took the envelope. This is substantial. It's damning. He's been careful, but not careful enough. There's a paper trail if you know where to look. Webb looked at Rowan. He's going after your company too. You know that, right? I know. Some of those documents might help with that. He's used similar tactics before. Regulatory complaints, investor manipulation. You can trace the pattern. They talked for another hour. Webb laid out everything. The women who'd worked for Richard and left broken, the business partners he'd crushed, the systematic way he'd built his empire on intimidation and cruelty. By the time they left, Lena felt like she'd been turned inside out. That was a lot, Rowan said as they walked to the car. Yeah. You okay? I don't know. She stopped walking. All those women, all those people, and I had no idea. You were a kid, and then you were his victim. You can't blame yourself for not seeing what he was doing to others. But if I'd spoken up sooner, then he would have destroyed you sooner. Lena, you survived. That's what matters. And now you're helping make sure he doesn't hurt anyone else. That's huge. She wanted to believe him, wanted to feel like a hero instead of someone who'd just stumbled into doing the right thing. But mostly she felt exhausted and overwhelmed and angry, so angry that her father had gotten away with this for so long. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Margaret compiled evidence, reached out to other potential witnesses, built a case that grew stronger by the day. 2 of the women Webb had mentioned agreed to testify. Then 3 more. Then someone from the company's HR department who'd been silenced for years. Richard's lawyers fought back hard. They attacked credibility, questioned timelines, tried to paint the witnesses as opportunists or liars. But the evidence kept mounting. And slowly, the narrative began to shift. The media picked up the story. Not the gossip rags this time.
Actual journalists investigating Richard Ashford's business practices, his treatment of employees, the suspicious pattern of settlements and NDAs. Rowan's company stabilized as the focus shifted away from his marriage and onto Richard's corruption. "We're winning," Margaret said during one of their strategy sessions. "Not easily and not cleanly, but we're winning." Lena didn't feel like they were winning. She felt like they were in the middle of a war where every victory came at a cost. She'd given 3 more depositions, answered questions that made her want to crawl out of her own skin, let strangers examine the scars on her back and document them for evidence. But she also felt something else, something unfamiliar and strange. She felt powerful, not in the way her father was powerful, through fear and control, but powerful in the sense that she was finally telling her story, and people were listening. She was standing up, and instead of being crushed, she was still standing. "I want to do an interview," she said one night over dinner. Rowan looked up from his plate. "What?" "A real interview. On the record. I want to tell my story publicly, not through lawyers or court documents. I want people to hear it from me." He paused. "That's going to open you up to a lot of scrutiny." "I know. Your father will tear it apart. His lawyers will use it against you." "I know that too." Lena set down her fork. "But I'm tired of hiding, tired of letting him control the narrative. If I'm going to do this, I want to do it completely. No more halfway measures." Mrs. Chen, who'd been hovering near the kitchen, spoke up. "Good. Let them see who you really are. Let them see what he did." "It could backfire," Rowan warned. "Or it could help other people come forward, other survivors who are too scared to speak up." Lena looked at him. "You said I was brave. Let me be brave." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, but we do it carefully. We choose the right journalist, someone who won't sensationalize it, and I'm there with you." "You don't have to." "I'm there with you," he repeated firmly. "That's not negotiable." They found a journalist named Sarah Chen, another Chen, apparently the universe was trying to tell them something, who specialized in investigative pieces about abuse and power dynamics. She met with them 3 times before the interview, building trust, understanding the scope of what Lena wanted to say. "This is going to be hard," Sarah warned. "People will question you, criticize you, blame you. That's what happens when victims speak out." "I know," Lena said. "I'm ready." The interview took place in their home, in the living room where Lena had slowly been learning what safety felt like. Sarah set up cameras, tested sound, made sure Lena was comfortable. "Whenever you're ready," Sarah said. Lena looked at Rowan, who sat just off camera. He nodded encouragement. She took a breath. "My name is Lena Hale, and my father spent 15 years systematically destroying me. For the next 2 hours, she talked. About the beatings, the manipulation, the way Richard had made her believe she was worthless. About the scars on her back and the ones you couldn't see. About marrying Rowan and slowly realizing that not all men were weapons." Sarah asked hard questions. "Why didn't you leave sooner? Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because I was a child when it started. And by the time I was old enough to leave, he'd convinced me I couldn't survive without him. That I was too broken, too damaged, too weak." Lena's voice was steady now. "He was wrong, but it took me a long time to figure that out." "What do you want people to know?" "That abuse thrives in silence. That men like my father count on their victims being too scared or too ashamed to speak up. And that speaking up is the hardest, scariest, most important thing you can do." "What about the people who say you're doing this for attention? Or money?" "I don't care what they say. I know my truth. And if my story helps even one person realize they don't have to live like that survival isn't the same as living, then it's worth it." When it was over, Lena felt hollowed out, but lighter somehow. Like she'd been carrying something heavy for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. The interview aired 3 days later. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Some people praised her courage. Others called her a liar, a gold digger, an attention seeker. Social media exploded with opinions, think pieces, hot takes. But among the noise, there were messages that mattered. Other survivors reaching out. Women who'd worked for her father confirming her story. People who'd been silent finding their voices. "You started something," Rowan said, scrolling through his phone. "Look at this. This woman worked for your father 10 years ago. She's coming forward with her own story. Lena read the post, felt tears sting her eyes. I didn't mean to start a movement. Maybe not, but you did anyway. Richard's response came a week later. A press conference where he played the wounded father, the victim of a vindictive daughter and a conspiracy of opportunists. He was smooth, convincing, everything Lena remembered. But this time, it didn't work. Too many people had come forward. Too much evidence had been compiled. The narrative had already shifted, and no amount of charm could shift it back. 2 days after Richard's press conference, 3 major companies pulled their contracts with his firm. Then 5 more. His board called an emergency meeting. Investors started asking uncomfortable questions. He's losing control, Margaret said during their check-in. His business is hemorrhaging money and credibility. The criminal investigation is moving forward. And the annulment case, well, that's basically dead in the water. No judge is going to side with him now. So we won? Lena asked. You're winning. There's a difference. Margaret closed her laptop. The final hearing is in 2 weeks. After that, the restraining order becomes permanent. The annulment case is dismissed, and your marriage is legally secure. But your father's still out there, and wounded animals are dangerous. Lena knew she was right. Richard Ashford didn't lose gracefully. He'd be planning something, biding his time, looking for an opening. But for now, she had something he didn't. She had people who believed her. She had a husband who'd chosen to stand beside her. She had a voice she was learning to use. The night before the final hearing, Lena couldn't sleep. She got up, found Rowan in his study working late. Couldn't sleep either? She asked from the doorway. He looked up, closed his laptop. Just going over everything, making sure we didn't miss anything. She came in, sat on the edge of his desk. We're going to be okay. Whatever happens tomorrow, we're going to be okay. When did you become the optimist? When I realized I'm not doing this alone anymore. She took his hand. I never thanked you properly. For what? For choosing me. For fighting for me. For... She gestured vaguely. All of it. You don't have to thank me for being a decent human being. Yes, I do, because decent human beings are rarer than they should be. She squeezed his hand. I love you. I don't know when it happened, but I do. And I needed you to know that before tomorrow. Rowan stared at her. You, love you, yes. I know it's complicated and messy, and we barely know each other, but... He kissed her. Cut off her rambling with his mouth on hers, gentle and sure and real. I love you too, he said when they broke apart. Have for a while now. Just didn't know if you were ready to hear it. I'm ready. They went to bed together, wrapped around each other, and this time Lena slept dreamlessly. The final hearing was anticlimactic in the best possible way. Richard's lawyers made their arguments, but they fell flat. The judge reviewed the evidence, listened to the testimonies, and made her ruling. The petition for annulment is denied. The restraining order is made permanent. Mr. Ashford, you are ordered to have no contact with your daughter, directly or indirectly, for a period of no less than 5 years. Additionally, I'm ordering a full financial audit of your business practices, and I'm referring several matters to the district attorney for criminal investigation. Richard stood. Your Honor, this is justice, Mr. Ashford, something you should have faced a long time ago. The judge looked at Lena. Mrs. Hale, you're free to go, and I hope you find peace. They walked out of the courtroom into late afternoon sunshine. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, but Lena barely heard them. She just held Rowan's hand and kept walking. Margaret caught up with them at the car. How does it feel? Strange, Lena said honestly, like I keep waiting for something terrible to happen. That's normal. It'll take time for your brain to catch up to the reality that you're safe now. Margaret smiled. But you did it. You beat him. We beat him, Lena corrected. I couldn't have done it alone. No, but you could have given up. You could have let him win. And you didn't. Margaret squeezed her shoulder. That's all you. That's your strength. They drove home. Walked into the house where Mrs. Chen had prepared a feast. Sat down to dinner like a normal family, like people who'd just won a hard-fought battle and deserved to celebrate. Later, when the dishes were cleared and Mrs. Chen had gone home and they were alone, Rowan pulled Lena into the garden. I want to show you something, he said. He led her to a corner she hadn't noticed before, where something was growing under a protective covering. He pulled it back. Roses. Deep red, just beginning to bloom. I planted these the week after our wedding, he said.
Figured we could use something beautiful, something that started the same time we did. Lena touched one of the petals, felt its softness. They're perfect. They're not, actually. Look, that one's got aphids, and that one's growing crooked. But they're alive, they're growing, and eventually they'll be stunning. He pulled her close, kind of like us. She laughed. That was incredibly cheesy. I know, but it's true. She looked at the roses, at the evidence of growth and care and patience, at something Rowan had started when they were strangers, believing somehow that it would matter down the line. Thank you, she said. For the roses? For believing we could grow into something beautiful, even when I didn't believe it myself. He kissed the top of her head. We're not done growing yet. No, she agreed. But we're getting there, and standing in their garden, surrounded by things they were learning to nurture, Lena felt something she'd never felt before. Not just safety, not just peace, but joy. Real, complicated, hard-won joy. Her father was beaten. The cycle was broken, and for the first time in her life, the future stretched ahead not as something to survive, but as something to live. Spring arrived slowly that year, like it was testing the ground before committing. Lena watched it happen from the kitchen window. Buds on trees, green pushing through brown earth, everything cautiously reaching toward the sun. She understood the hesitation. Growth after trauma wasn't a straight line. It was messy, uncertain, full of false starts. She'd started writing again, nothing profound, nothing she planned to show anyone. Just words on paper, filling notebooks the way she used to before her father burned them all. Sometimes she wrote about the past, sometimes about the present. Sometimes just fragments of thought that didn't connect to anything. Rowan found her one morning, 3 notebooks deep into whatever this was becoming. You're up early, he said, pouring coffee. Couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts. She closed the notebook. You're home late last night. Board meeting ran long. We're acquiring a smaller firm. Whole thing's a mess. He sat across from her. How are you doing? Really? I don't know. Better? Different? She turned the mug in her hands. I keep waiting to feel normal, whatever that is. Maybe there is no normal. Maybe there's just learning to live with everything that happened. That sounds exhausting. It is. But you're doing it anyway. The criminal case against Richard moved forward with the speed of a glacier, slow, inexorable, grinding. The district attorney had assigned a prosecutor named James Liu, who called them weekly with updates. Evidence was being compiled. Witnesses were being interviewed. Grand juries were being convened. These things take time, Liu said during one of their meetings. We're building an airtight case. Multiple counts of assault, witness tampering, fraud. When we go to trial, we want to make sure he can't wriggle out. When do you think that'll be? Lena asked. 8 months? Maybe longer. Liu looked at her with something like pity. I know that's not what you want to hear, but justice isn't fast. She left that meeting feeling deflated. 8 months. 8 more months of waiting, of looking over her shoulder, of wondering what Richard was planning in the shadows. But life didn't stop while they waited. Rowan's company continued to grow. Mrs. Chen fussed over them both like a mother hen. The garden bloomed, and slowly, carefully, Lena built a life that was hers. She started volunteering at a women's shelter, just a few hours a week at first, helping with intake paperwork, organizing donations. Nothing that required her to talk about her own experiences. But being around other survivors, seeing their strength, their determination to rebuild, gave her something she hadn't expected. Perspective. You're doing good work here, the shelter director said one afternoon. Her name was Patricia, and she had the kind eyes of someone who'd seen everything and still chose kindness. The women respond to you. They trust you. I don't do much. You show up, you listen, you don't judge. Patricia smiled. That's everything to someone who's been told they're worthless their whole life. Lena thought about that on the drive home, about how the smallest acts of decency could be revolutionary when you'd been starved of them, about how she was learning to give to others what she desperately needed herself. The call came on a Tuesday in early summer. Liu's voice was tight, controlled. We need to meet, today if possible. They met at his office. Margaret was already there, looking grim. What happened? Rowan asked. Liu pulled out a file. Your father had a heart attack 3 days ago. Massive. He's in the hospital, but the prognosis isn't good. The doctors are saying days, maybe a week.
Lena felt the floor tilt. He's dying? Yes. And his lawyers are pushing for a deathbed immunity deal. They want us to drop all charges in exchange for a full confession and financial restitution to his victims. Absolutely not, Rowan said immediately.
Let me finish. Lou held up a hand. I told them no. We don't make deals with men like Richard Ashford, but he looked at Lena. His lawyers also said he's asking to see you. One final meeting, no conditions, no strings, just a dying man who wants to see his daughter. The room went silent. No, Rowan said. Absolutely not. It's not your decision, Lena said quietly. Lena, it's not your decision. She looked at Lou. Does he know I'm the one who has to agree?
Yes. And he apparently said, Lou checked his notes. He said to tell you he's sorry. Margaret leaned forward. You don't owe him anything. You don't have to go. I know. He could be playing you one last manipulation. I know that too. Then why even consider it? Lena didn't have a good answer. Or maybe she had too many answers and couldn't sort through them. She just knew that if she didn't go, she'd spend the rest of her life wondering if he'd actually felt remorse, wondering if there'd been something human left underneath the monster, wondering if she'd missed her one chance for closure, however ugly it might be. I want to see him, she said. Rowan stood abruptly. No. Rowan, no. I'm not letting you walk into that hospital and let him hurt you one more time. He's dying. I don't care. He spent years destroying you. He doesn't get a deathbed redemption just because he's scared of what comes next. This isn't about giving him anything. It's about me. Lena stood too, faced him. I need to see him. I need to look him in the eye one last time and know that I survived him, that I won. You already won. You don't need his permission to know that. You're right. But I still need to go. They stared at each other across the office. Then Rowan's shoulders sagged. If you're going, I'm coming with you. He asked to see me alone. I don't care what he asked for. I'm not letting you face him alone. I won't be alone. She took his hand. You'll be right outside, but I need to do this part by myself. Please trust me. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. Okay, but if he says one thing, does one thing that hurts you, then I'll walk out, I promise. The hospital was sterile and white and smelled like antiseptic and slow death. Lena walked through halls that seemed to stretch forever, Rowan beside her until they reached the room where Richard lay dying. I'll be right here, Rowan said. I know. She pushed open the door. Richard Ashford looked small. That was the first thing that struck her. He'd always been larger than life, commanding every space he occupied. But here, hooked up to machines that beeped and wheezed, he looked like what he was, an old man at the end of his road. His eyes opened when she entered. Something flickered across his face. Recognition. Maybe regret. Maybe nothing. Lena, he said. His voice was weak, barely above a whisper. Father, you came. I almost didn't. I wouldn't have blamed you. He coughed, winced. Thank you. She pulled a chair to his bedside, sat down, kept her distance. Your lawyer said you wanted to apologize. Yes, though I don't expect you to accept it. He turned his head to look at her fully. I've spent the last few weeks thinking about my life, about what I've done, the people I've hurt, and I've realized something. What's that? I don't know why I did it, any of it. I've been trying to find a reason, some explanation that makes sense, but there isn't one. I was cruel because I could be, because I was cruel to, and I never learned to be anything else. And I took it out on you because you were there, and you were mine, and I thought that gave me the right. Lena felt something cold settle in her chest. That's not an apology. No, it's an explanation. The apology is this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every time I hit you, every time I made you believe you were worthless, every time I broke something in you that you had to rebuild yourself. I'm sorry I was your father. You deserved better. Yes, I did. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. The way you fought back, the way you survived me, the way you're living now from what I hear. You're stronger than I ever was. Don't do that. Do what? Try to make this about strength or survival or any of that. You don't get to be proud of me. You don't get to take credit for what I became despite you. She leaned forward.
I came here because I needed to see you one last time. I needed to look at you and realize you're just a man, not a monster, not some unstoppable force, just a sad, broken man who hurt people because he didn't know how to do anything else. Richard closed his eyes. You're right. I know I'm right. She stood. I forgive you. His eyes opened. What? I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, not because it makes what you did okay, but because I'm tired of carrying you around with me everywhere I go. I'm tired of letting you have space in my head. So I'm letting it go. All of it. Lena, I hope you find peace. Whatever comes next, I hope you find it. But I'm done. We're done. This is goodbye. She walked to the door. His voice stopped her. Will you tell your daughter about me? She turned. What? Someday, when you have children, will you tell them about their grandfather? I don't know. Maybe. But if I do, I'll tell them the truth. That you were a man who hurt people, and that their mother survived you and built something better. She paused. And I'll tell them that the cycle ends with me, that they'll never know what it's like to be afraid in their own home. Richard nodded slowly. That's good. That's right. She left. Walked out of that room and didn't look back. Rowan was there, exactly where he said he'd be. He took one look at her face and pulled her into his arms. How was it? He asked. Necessary. She pressed her face against his chest. Can we go home? Yeah, let's go home. Richard Ashford died 2 days later. The news came early morning, a phone call from Lou confirming what they'd been waiting for. Lena felt nothing. No relief, no grief, no sense of victory, just a quiet acknowledgement that a chapter had finally closed. There was a funeral. Private, small, barely attended. Lena didn't go. Neither did most of the people who'd worked for him or suffered under him. The man who'd built an empire through fear died with only a handful of people who felt obligated to show up. How do you feel? Rowan asked that night as they sat in the garden, the roses blooming wild around them. Empty. But not in a bad way. More like, she searched for the words, like I've been carrying something heavy for so long that now that it's gone, I don't know what to do with the space. You fill it with something better. Like what? Whatever you want. That's the point. It's your space now, your life. He doesn't get to haunt it anymore. She thought about that. About all the space she'd been given back, space in her mind, her body, her days. About what she wanted to fill it with. I want to write a book, she said suddenly. Rowan looked at her. About what? About this. About surviving him. Not a memoir exactly, but something that might help other people going through the same thing. Something that says you can make it to the other side. That's a good idea. You think so? I think you have a story worth telling, and I think you've earned the right to tell it however you want. She smiled. Will you help me? I don't know anything about writing books. You know about me. That's enough. The book took 8 months to write. 8 months of late nights and early mornings, of writing and deleting and writing again, of excavating memories she'd buried and finding words for things she'd never known how to name. Rowan read every draft, offered honest feedback, held her when the process got too heavy. Mrs. Chen brought her tea and snacks and gentle reminders to eat. Patricia at the shelter connected her with other survivors willing to share their stories. Margaret provided legal advice about what could and couldn't be published. And slowly, page by page, the book took shape. It wasn't perfect. Parts were clunky, overwrought, too raw. But it was real. It was hers. And when she finally typed the last sentence, she felt something shift inside her. Not completion. She didn't think healing ever really completed, but transformation. She wasn't the same person who'd walked down that aisle in a dress that cost more than most people's lives. She was someone new, someone she was still learning to be. The book came out on a Tuesday in spring. Small print run, modest expectations. Lena didn't expect it to change the world. She just hoped it might reach the people who needed it. It reached more people than she imagined. Reviews came in praising its honesty, its rawness, its refusal to package trauma into neat, digestible lessons. Survivors wrote to her, thanking her for making them feel less alone. Therapists recommended it to clients. Domestic violence organizations bought copies in bulk.
You're making a difference, Rowan said, reading through a stack of letters. I'm just telling the truth. That's what makes the difference. 6 months after the book's release, Lena got an invitation. A domestic violence awareness conference wanted her to be the keynote speaker. She stared at the invitation for a full day before showing it to Rowan. Are you going to do it? He asked. I don't know. Speaking to a room full of strangers about the worst things that ever happened to me? That sounds terrifying. It is terrifying, but you've done scarier things. Have I? You married a stranger who turned out to be kind of okay. You stood up to your father in court. You wrote a book about surviving abuse. Compared to all that, giving a speech is nothing, she laughed. When did you become such an optimist? When I married someone who taught me that hard things are worth doing. She accepted the invitation. The conference was held in a hotel ballroom packed with advocates, survivors, therapists, lawyers. Lena stood backstage, hands shaking, wondering what the hell she'd been thinking. Then Rowan appeared beside her. What are you doing back here? She asked. Making sure you know you don't have to do this if you don't want to. We can leave right now. No one would blame you. I want to do it. Then I'll be in the front row. And if you look at me and decide you can't continue, we'll get up and walk out together, okay? Okay. She went on stage, looked out at hundreds of faces, felt panic rise in her throat. Then she found Rowan in the front row, exactly where he said he'd be. He smiled. She took a breath. My name is Lena Hale, she said, and I spent most of my life believing I was too broken to survive. I was wrong. She talked for 30 minutes about her father, about the abuse, about the long, painful process of learning to live instead of just survive, about the moment she decided to fight back, about the people who stood beside her when she did. I'm not going to stand here and tell you it gets easy, she said as she reached the end. It doesn't. There are still days when I wake up and the first thing I feel is fear. Days when I'm convinced I'm not strong enough, not brave enough, not enough. But I've learned something important. You don't have to feel brave to do brave things. You just have to do them anyway. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. People came up to her afterward, crying, thanking her, sharing their own stories. Lena listened to all of them, held space for their pain, and felt something in her chest expand. This was what healing looked like. Not forgetting what happened, but choosing to use it to help others. That night, back at home, she found Rowan in the garden. He was tending the roses, cutting back dead growth to make room for new blooms. Hey, she said, sitting on the bench beside him. Hey yourself, you were incredible today. I was terrified. Terrified and incredible aren't mutually exclusive. He set down the pruning shears. I'm proud of you. Thank you for being there, for always being there. Where else would I be? She took his hand. I have something to tell you. His expression shifted. That sounds ominous. It's not. It's... She paused, searching for the right words. I'm pregnant. Rowan went completely still. You're pregnant. About 10 weeks. I found out last week, but I wanted to be sure before I told you. And I wanted to get through the conference first because I knew if I told you before, you'd spend the whole time worrying about me instead of letting me do what I needed to do. He stopped. Started again. We're having a baby. Yes. An actual human baby. That's generally how it works. He laughed, pulled her into his arms. I can't believe it. I mean, I can, but... He pulled back, looked at her face. Are you okay? Are you scared? Terrified, but also... She put his hand on her still flat stomach. Also hopeful. Because this baby is going to grow up in a house where love doesn't come with conditions, where fear isn't the baseline, where parents choose to be better than the ones they had. We're going to screw up sometimes. Probably, but we'll apologize when we do, and we'll keep trying to get it right. She smiled. That's all anyone can do. The pregnancy was surprisingly easy, physically at least. Emotionally, it was a minefield. Lena spent months terrified she'd somehow inherit her father's cruelty, that it was coded in her DNA and would emerge when she least expected it. Rowan reminded her daily that recognizing the possibility was proof she wouldn't let it happen. You're already a better parent than he ever was, Rowan said one night as they assembled a crib in what would become the nursery. You're worried about doing it right. He never questioned himself once. What if I don't know how to love her properly? Then we'll figure it out together, same as everything else. Their daughter was born on a cold January morning, screaming her fury at the world. They named her Iris, after the flower, after new beginnings, after the Greek messenger of hope. She had Rowan's dark hair and Lena's eyes and a temperament that suggested she'd inherited stubbornness from both sides. Lena held her daughter for the first time and felt something break open in her chest. Not pain this time. Something else. Something that felt like redemption. "Hi," she whispered to the tiny, perfect face. "I'm your mom, and I promise, you'll never be afraid of me. You'll never wonder if I love you. You'll never have to earn the right to exist. You just get to be, okay?" Iris yawned, entirely unimpressed. Rowan laughed from his chair beside the bed. "She's already keeping us humble. Good, we probably need that." They took Iris home 3 days later. Mrs. Chen cried when she saw her, immediately claimed grandmother rights, and proceeded to spoil the baby shamelessly. The house filled with noise, crying, laughter, the sounds of life being lived. Lena wrote about it. Not for publication, just in her notebooks. About the terror and wonder of being responsible for another human. About watching Rowan become a father and discovering he was somehow even better at it than she'd imagined. About the moment Iris first smiled at her, and she felt her heart crack open wider than she thought possible. Iris was 6 months old when they received word that Richard's estate had been fully liquidated. The proceeds, after settling debts and restitution to his victims, would be distributed among those he'd hurt. Lena's share was substantial, life-changing money. "What do you want to do with it?" Rowan asked. "I want to start a foundation for survivors of domestic violence. Something that provides legal support, therapy, emergency housing, everything I wish had existed when I needed it. That's perfect." "Really? Really? You're taking something he used to hurt people and turning it into something that helps them. If that's not poetic justice, I don't know what is." The foundation launched a year later. They called it the Iris Foundation, after new beginnings and hope. It grew quickly, helping dozens, then hundreds of people escape situations they thought were inescapable. Lena ran it with the same determination she'd used to survive, and watching survivors rebuild their lives gave her purpose beyond anything she'd imagined. Iris grew. Started walking, started talking, started having opinions about everything. She was fearless in the way only children who'd never known fear could be. She asked why constantly, challenged everything, refused to accept "because I said so" as an answer. "She's exhausting," Lena said one evening after putting Iris to bed for the 3rd time. "She's like her mother," Rowan said. "I was never that stubborn." "You absolutely were. You still are. It's one of my favorite things about you." Lena leaned against him, watched the sun set through the window. "Do you think we're doing okay? As parents?" "I think we're doing our best. And I think Iris knows she's loved. That's what matters. Sometimes I worry that I'm too protective, that I'm letting my own issues affect how I parent her. You're aware of it. That's the important part. Your father never questioned himself, never admitted he was wrong, never tried to be better. You do all of those things. That's the difference." Years passed. Iris started school. The foundation grew. Lena's 2nd book came out, then a 3rd. Rowan's company continued to thrive. They fought sometimes, made up, learned each other's patterns and triggers and soft spots. They were imperfect, messy, human, and they were happy. Lena still had nightmares occasionally, still flinched at sudden movements sometimes, still carried scars that would never fully fade. But she'd learned that healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about not letting it define the future. One Saturday morning, when Iris was 7, Lena found her in the garden. Their daughter was crouched by the roses, examining them with the serious concentration of someone making an important discovery. "What are you looking at?" Lena asked. "These flowers. Dad says you planted them when you got married." "He planted them. I just helped." "Why roses?" "Because they're beautiful. And because they have thorns, but they're still worth growing." Iris considered this. "Like people?" "Exactly like people." "Dad says Grandpa Richard was mean to you." Lena's heart stuttered. They'd told Iris some things, age-appropriate versions of the truth. But this was the first time she'd asked directly. "He was. But I got away from him. And now I have you and Dad and this whole life that's mine." "Do you miss him?" "Sometimes I miss who I wished he could be, but no, I don't miss who he actually was." Iris picked a rose, careful of the thorns. I'm glad you got away. Me too, baby. Me too. That night, after Iris was asleep, Lena sat in her study surrounded by notebooks and manuscript pages and letters from people she'd helped. She thought about that scared girl at an altar, marrying a stranger and believing her life was over. She thought about the long, painful journey from that moment to this one. Rowan appeared in the doorway. You okay? Yeah, just thinking. About? About how far we've come. About how none of this, she gestured around them. None of this was what I expected. In a good way? In the best way. She stood, moved to him. Thank you. For what? For being the person who chose to stand beside me instead of over me. For showing me what love looks like when it's not twisted into something ugly. For giving me Iris in this life and, her voice caught, for everything. He kissed her forehead. You did that yourself. I just had the good sense to stay close while you figured it out. We did it together. Yeah, we did. They stood there in her study, two people who'd started as strangers and become something neither of them had words for. Something stronger than love, deeper than partnership. Something forged in fire and tempered by time. Outside, spring was turning into summer. The roses were blooming. Iris was sleeping peacefully in her room, dreaming whatever 7-year-olds dreamed about. And Lena Hale, survivor, author, mother, founder of an organization that helped people escape the kind of hell she'd once lived in, felt something she'd never thought possible. She felt free, not free from the past. That would always be part of her, would always shape who she was, but free from its power over her. Free to choose her own path, free to build a life defined by love instead of fear. She'd broken the cycle, and in doing so, she'd become exactly who she needed to be, not perfect, not undamaged, but whole. Beautifully, powerfully, undeniably whole. The end wasn't neat. There was no final confrontation, no dramatic moment of triumph. Just the quiet, persistent work of building a life worth living. Just the daily choice to be better, do better, love better. Just survival transformed into something magnificent. And that, Lena thought as she turned off the lights and headed to bed, was more than enough. It was everything.